Do you remember your New Year's resolution in the year 2000? I do. I totally remember it because it was not only a new year, it was a new decade, a new century, and a new millennium. And I wanted a big resolution, something that really counted. I was a 19-year-old sophomore attending the University of Washington in Seattle. I was living with my boyfriend in a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment with another couple. And for 5 years, I had been thinking and feeling guilty about not going to church. I grew up going to church with my grandparents from the time I was 6. And I never didn't enjoy it. I believed it. I believed everything they taught me. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the time with my grandparents, and I enjoyed having a faith and a system of beliefs for myself. But I stopped going because I started dating a boy when I was 14, and that was contrary to the standards of our church. And to be honest, I felt really guilty about it. And my grandparents were very judgmental, and they let me know that they also were not happy about that choice. So instead of facing my guilt or changing my choice, I just stopped going to church so I didn't have to deal with my grandparents. But the whole time, the whole 5 years that I wasn't going to church, I felt guilty, sometimes more than others. And I felt like I should be there, that I wanted to be there even. I just couldn't bring myself to go every week. So when I moved away to college, I thought, this is my fresh start. But of course, when you're a freshman in college, everything is new and you're trying to figure out how to manage it all and finding your classes and making friends and getting jobs and feeding yourself, right? So it wasn't the highest priority. But when it came time to make a New Year's resolution, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. Later that year, the year 2000, I had a conversation with my mom. She and my dad had never been married, but they were basically going through what would have been a divorce. They had a very strained relationship. My mother had moved out and had moved on, but I had a 9-year-old little sister who they were trying to figure out a custody agreement for. My dad could be very vindictive and mean, and my mom, who is a daddy's girl herself, she didn't want to take my little sister away from her dad. So she wanted to really figure out something that would work for everyone. But it was a really difficult time for her. I remember talking to her on the phone and her being very upset and confused and not knowing what the right choices to make were. And my mom was not religious. She was not a member of the church, but she always supported me in going to church. So I never really talked to her about my faith or my religion or anything relating to church. It was kind of like I separated those two parts of my life. And I remember on this phone call with her that I didn't really know what to say. She was kind of looking to me for advice or, I don't know, to make her feel better in some way. And I remember being like, I had to leave fairly quickly, and I just said, Mom, I don't know what to tell you, and I'm sorry you're going through this, but whatever's supposed to happen, Heavenly Father will make sure it happens. And as those words fell out of my mouth, it kind of surprised even me because I never really talked to her about that. And I just told her I loved her and that I would talk to her again soon, and I said goodbye. A couple days later, my boyfriend and I left on a road trip to go visit his family who lived in the Bay Area. One night, we were staying with his aunt and uncle, and they woke me up and they said, you got to take this phone call. And the phone was shoved in my face, and I was like, hello? And I was half asleep still when I heard, is this Danita Castillo? And I said, yeah. And they said, "This is the chaplain from Sacred Heart Medical Center in Spokane. Your mother has been in an accident. She's in critical condition and we need you to get here as soon as possible." So in my shock and my tired stupor, I started packing, and my boyfriend's aunt and uncle were wonderful. They called the airline and booked us flights and drove us the 2 hours to the San Francisco airport. And when I arrived in Spokane to the hospital where my mom was in a coma, most of the rest of my family was already there. I, along with my sister, was my mother's next of kin. So it was up to us to make all of the medical decisions. At the beginning of the week, the doctors were hopeful that she would come out of the coma eventually. So we had some missionaries from our church come and give her a blessing, which is standard practice in our church. And they blessed her that she would get better. So we were super hopeful. Every day we were just hoping for signs that she was recovering and would wake up from her coma. As the week progressed, the doctors told us that her reflexes were declining and that it was unlikely that she would ever wake up. So there we were, surrounded with our family, with several opinions on what we should or shouldn't do. 2 teenage girls trying to make a decision that is terrible for even full-grown adults to make. And my sister and I remember we had a conversation in that hospital in the hallway where she was doubting her faith. She had been super faithful and strong and active in our church all throughout her teenage years, and I wasn't. And she came to me and she said something to the effect of, those missionaries blessed Mom that she would get better and she's not. So I don't know. I don't know if I believe any of it anymore. I don't remember what I told her, but I do distinctly recall in my mind's eye feeling like I was on this mountaintop precipice, that I could go back and not go to church and not believe, or I could move forward with faith. And in that moment, I heard my conversation with my mom from about a week earlier, and how I told her that whatever was supposed to happen would happen, and that Heavenly Father would make sure of it. And I decided to move forward with faith. The next year of my life was one of the hardest that I ever had to endure. It took me almost a full year before I could even talk about my mom without crying. And it was hard. There were a lot of family dynamics that happened that made it very difficult on everyone. But I clung to that idea that God would make sure that everything that was supposed to happen would happen. That was a huge turning point for me in my faith journey. That I realized I had a choice. That I didn't have to go to church. I didn't have to believe in God or anything else, but that I actually wanted to. And that moment of decision for me has been one of the greatest moments of my life. I now view everything in my life through the lens of, is it bringing me closer to God? Is it strengthening my faith or not? And I really put a lot of value on being able to listen to that inner voice within me. Losing my mom was one of the most difficult things that I've ever had to endure. But in a way, it has really made me stronger, and it has made me the person that I am today.